Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Plant Powered People podcast with your hosts, Michelle Kane
and Tony Okamoto.
Today, we're excited to have a topic that has been much requested. We hear all the time from people who are going plant-based or going vegan and really struggling that their family around them is not on board with the plant-based lifestyle, and how to kind of navigate that situation. So we brought on the perfect person to talk about this, Stephanie Dreyer. She has been vegan for 10 years now, and her family, her kids, her husband, when she decided to step into a plant-based lifestyle, were not on board. So she talks about how she navigates that, where they are now, and dishes out a ton of helpful tips that we know will be helpful to so many of you who are struggling with the exact same thing.
And what I especially loved about this episode is that she will share what has failed for her, as well as what works and what she sees the most success with. So stay tuned. She is brilliant in this, and we love her approach.
Yes. So thank you so much, Stephanie. Can't wait to step into that. But before we do, we want to introduce our sponsor for this episode. My Tony, your skin is looking so radiant.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my vegan diet. But for real, I've actually been really obsessed with skincare. I had never thought about skincare until the Sunny episode. So we did an episode last season with Sunny, and she talks about skincare. And one of the things she brought up was anti-aging. And I had never thought about what the sun does to my skin. I'd only used water until I was introduced to Osea.
Right. And I don't know how many of you guys listening to this, but Tony, all of her life, has never used a facial moisturizer. If I get out of the shower and I don't smear my face in moisturizer, it just becomes like a dry mess. So it's something that I've always used. And now that Tony's kind of become hooked, we're really excited that we feel like this is the perfect sponsor. So Osea makes, one product that we've been loving is their Atmosphere Protection Cream. But all of their products are cruelty-free. They're totally natural. They are vegan, of course, and it's inspired by the sea, hence the name Osea. All of the products include a sustainably sourced algae and are just really high quality premium products. So this is their facial moisturizer that has been working wonders.
Yes, I just lathered some on my face and it's nice and soft and moisturized. And I'm really grateful for the long-term benefits. So thank you, Osea.
Yeah, and it's really cool to see a lot of really high quality premium companies stepping up. They are really conscious about sustainability. So this product comes in a glass bottle rather than plastic, which is amazing for the environment. And it's just really thoughtfully produced across the board.
And I'm really impressed. I was checking it out on the website, and they have 293 reviews with a 5-star average. That's amazing.
Unheard of.
Yeah. So if you want to check them out, they are passing along savings to our audience. And the promo code for that is Plant Powered Podcast at oseamalibu.com.
Yep. You can just put that in the code as you check out on any purchase over $50. For a first-time purchase, you'll save $10. And we love savings. You guys know all about that.
Definitely love savings.
So thank you so much, Osea. Hope you guys check them out. And if you're looking for some high quality, awesome skincare, definitely don't miss them. Without further ado, let's jump into the show.
Hi, Stephanie. How are you?
Hi, I'm great.
Thanks so much for coming on the show today. We're so excited to talk to you about something we feel is going to help a lot of people, and that is having a mixed family. So you're vegan and your family's not, right?
That's right.
Well,
I was going to say it's fun times in my house with all the different needs and wants and picky eaters and all that great stuff. And then you just pile on the different dietary restrictions. It's a zoo over here, but it's great. It's all good.
Yeah, it's one of the questions or the struggles we hear most often is, and it's something that, the whole purpose of us doing this podcast is we get so many questions that we can't personally relate to or share our personal experiences about. And so bringing on people who live and breathe it every day, which you have been doing for years, is the whole purpose of the Plant Powered People podcast. So we're so excited to have you here. But before we jump in, we'd love to know a little bit about your background. Where are you from? Where do you live? Have you always been vegan?
Just tell us your story.
Okay, well, I'm in Los Angeles, born and raised. I had a brief um, residence in Chicago for a couple of years while I was in grad school, but for basically my whole life, I've lived in Southern California, and I love it. I have three kids, and I went vegan 10 years ago when my actually, yeah, 10. Gosh, I sound old now.
No,
um,
happy 10-year vegan anniversary. Woohoo!
I went vegan when my youngest son was 1. Actually, he weaned himself off breastfeeding, and I was nursing him, and just made this connection with Mama Cow. I had been reading The Kind Diet by Alicia Silverstone at the time, and I actually had been vegetarian for 5 years. All through my first and second pregnancies. And then at the end of my second pregnancy, like literally at the end, like 8 months, I started craving meat and became very disconnected. But with the reason that I went vegetarian was because of the animals and animal cruelty. And for whatever reason, I gave into that desire and started eating meat again for about 3 years until I had my son, which brings me back to my story. Was I was nursing him and made this connection with Mama Cow and went vegan overnight. Immediately said, I'm done with dairy. I'm vegan. And I had always joked that I would never give up dairy because I loved cheese, and it was like not even a second thought. And I've never turned back. Literally the next day we happened to be on a family trip, and my husband ordered cheese pizza, and I wouldn't eat it. And the kids were like, why won't you eat the pizza, Mom? And it was the beginning of my journey of trying to navigate being vegan and balancing my family, respecting where they were at on their own journey. And it has not always been smooth. It has not always been easy, but I can happily say my oldest, actually, who's now 16, she was 6 when I went vegan, has been vegetarian going on her 4-year vegiversary, on her own accord. That was her decision. And we all eat vegan at home when I cook. I'll talk more a little about that. But the rest of the family is not vegan, and they make their own choices and this and that. So it has been a journey. My background is in marketing, but I've always been a writer. So I have 2 vegan children's picture books that are fun and about helping families be more aware of the choices they make when it comes to eating and also purchasing products for their house or their home and their body, clothing and things like that. So I'm very passionate about what the vegan message and living a kind, compassionate life. That's basically what I try to preach I'll talk a little bit about that. I'm sure we'll get to about how I used to preach a lot to my family, and that didn't go over so well. But I try to live a life where I'm leading by example. And so I'm very passionate about sharing compassionate, conscious choices. So whatever I do, I make a conscious choice. So I have a website at stephaniedreyer.com. I focus on plant-based meal planning and helping families cook and eat healthier together. I'm all about sitting down to the table and nurturing family discussions. And I don't think there's any better way that you can make family connections than over the dinner table. So I talk a lot about that and how it's so hard to get a home cooked meal on the table these days. So I get it. It's hard. The struggle is definitely real. I've got 3 kids. I work, volunteer. We've all juggled these things, but I'm very passionate about making sure I cook 5 to 7 nights a week, at least 5 nights a week, so that my family can sit down together with a home cooked meal and connect and build relationships together and talk about important stuff. So I guess that's me.
So we'd love to talk a little bit more about that and dig deeper into that in a little bit. But I would love to know a little bit more about your history. So what kind of food did you grow up eating, and where did you grow up, and how was that transition for you from what you were eating before to what you're eating now?
Yeah, that's great. Okay. So it's so funny when I look back in my childhood. I am Hispanic and Italian. So I grew up with a mom and a nonna who cooked a lot, very traditional Latin and Italian foods that are rich with cheese and dairy, lasagna, meats. We had all types of different meat growing up. And I always had my family cooked a lot. So we always had home cooked meals. And there was always it was the traditional standard American diet. Meat, you had your protein, your starch, and a vegetable. And most of the vegetables, I look back now of how my mom made vegetables and I just like cringe of like how much more delicious, I think of what I give my kids, I had like I don't know if any of you can relate, but like the overcooked soggy broccoli and the like Brussels sprouts that were just all like, they were steamed,
boiled.
They were roasted. Yeah, it was just gross. I think back at when I had to eat green beans and actually out of a can. I came from a very middle class family where it's not like we didn't eat out a lot. Like it was, my mom was definitely watching her budget. My parents are divorced, so I lived full time with my mom, and every other weekend were at my dad's. I remember my dad would give us like little Vienna sausages, bachelor out of the can, those Vienna sausages.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't know what to cook us. My mom did a little better, but my mom, it was very traditional. Those Italian foods, those Latin foods, and really didn't think much of it, until you get older and you start doing, more research and learning more. So that's kind of where I come from. And actually, it's been really fun over the last few years veganizing many of my grandmother's Italian recipes that she got from her mother that were from Italy. Because she's the only one that was born here. Everybody else was born in Italy. And also veganizing a lot of my mom's recipes. And it's actually been a nice way for us to connect because, going vegan, for me at least, my family was very worried about me. They thought, oh my goodness, are you going to be healthy and this and that? And it's been a journey to get them on board. And I'm happy to say they are all on board and very supportive. And it's fun to take family favorites and turn them into vegan variations that are just as good, if not better, you guys. I think, sorry, Mom, but I think some of mine are better than yours.
Your recipes are amazing, Stephanie. Stephanie has done a bunch of guest recipes for World of Vegan and just does a ton of like meal planning resources and everything on her blog. And your recipes are so good and familiar and like a comfort food, non-vegan approved food, which is beautiful.
Thanks, Michelle.
So let's take it back to the moment that I think so many of our listeners will be able to relate to, which is when you decided to go vegan yourself. So many people decide to go vegan and they're maybe living on their own or maybe have a boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, a partner. And it's like that in itself is a big decision and a big, like you already have to deal with your family and trying new foods and learning new recipes and everything. It's already a challenge. But when you are the primary cook for your family, you have kids, you have a husband, you have a routine that's been kind of formed over years, and then all of a sudden you want to make a very drastic change for yourself. How did your family respond? How did you bring it up with them? Like take us to that moment in time and like paint that picture.
Yeah. Okay. So like I mentioned, it was immediate for me. Oprah talks about those aha moments. Like I feel like I had an out of body aha moment where I'm reading this book and I'm nursing my child at the same time. I look down at him and I'm like, whoa, I can't drink milk anymore. For me, it made so much sense. And I couldn't understand why anyone who had the same information that I had wouldn't make the same choice, which was my first challenge in telling my family.
Hey, Stephanie, there are probably some listeners who don't really understand the connection. The gestation period is the same. It's 9 months. And I was wondering if you could go into a little bit more detail about what was so compelling for those who don't understand what the dairy industry is like.
Yeah. So, I mean, aside from all of the cruelty that I was reading about in this book and what I guess I identified with, like you said, there's a lot of similarities between us and Mama Cow. But the whole reason that humans produce milk, breast milk, is to feed their baby. That's the reason we produce breast milk. And it is the same exact thing for Mama Cow. She produces milk to feed her babies, not to get, contrary to what, the dairy industry would like you to believe, that that's her duty to provide us milk. No, she has to be pregnant to have breast milk. And that is for her baby. Even if you look at I don't know how detailed we want to go into, but the breakdown of what's in breast milk versus cow's milk, like it is made to sustain however 100,000 pounds, I don't even know how big a calf is, to nourish that little baby cow in those first, few months of life or whatever it is. Just like breast milk is the breast milk that a mother carries is very specific to what her baby needs. And so I was compelled by that, thinking, oh my gosh, mama cow, if she has to be pregnant, then she's being raped. She's being forced to first of all, to have a baby. Then that baby, a lot of time I learned, is ripped from her. And that milk she produced for that baby, she can't even give to that baby because it's being taken to give to the dairy farmers. So for me, it was very compelling. I can't even tell. I get so emotional about it. And when people start to ask me, what made you switch since you were a vegetarian? And I start to explain my connection, they don't want to hear it because it's so uncomfortable. But I think that's what we have to talk about. So obviously I didn't tell this to my children in this way because they were, what did I say? Let's see. Gabby was 6 and my middle daughter was 3. And then I had a 1-year-old. So I didn't share that information. But what I did is I talked to my husband, obviously, immediately and said, look, I'm reading this book. I know so much more than I knew before, and explained to him. And he was so supportive and was like, he was like, okay, this makes so much sense, but I can't do it. You're a better person. I can't give up. It's hard for people who've lived their whole life. So I was 34 at the time, living, minus those 5 years as a vegetarian. It's uncomfortable, right? It's going against everything you've ever known, down to, and I'll talk about this in a second, down to how you structure your meals. You're used to a standard American diet of meat, starch, and veg. And so that's uncomfortable, having to redo it. It's uncomfortable socially because back then, 10 years ago, it's a heck of a lot easier now. But back then, nobody knew really what vegan was, or if they did, there was like a negative stigma. It just was difficult. It was uncomfortable and difficult to go out, to socialize. And then your family, I'm sure many people who have just gone vegan can relate. There's this like, well, are you getting enough protein? Like, what about fiber? What about this? Like, are you getting everything you need? And so you're coming up against all of these objections, which, all contribute to that. I can understand why my husband was like, well, I can't do this, because he hadn't read the book. I had read the book, even though I was telling him. He wasn't on the same page with me. And
yeah, it's kind of like everyone needs to find their own why, which has to be such a strong and compelling, personal and individualized why to make all of those changes that you're talking about. And so you found that in that very like intimate moment, breastfeeding your children and reading the book, and like that clicked for you. But to just tell someone about it, like when I watch a documentary and I tell someone, I just learned this information, you're going to want to do the same changes that I'm making. Like they haven't seen it. They haven't clicked in the same exact pattern that you have. And so it's rarely hits people strong enough at the exact same time with the people in your family around you.
That is so true, Michelle. And I wish I had had that realization before I started pushing, because what happened was I didn't have that realization then that everyone needs their own why. I just assumed, well, they're going to hear this information. They're going to, of course, be like, oh my God, we have to give up animal products. Unfortunately, it took me at least a good 6 months to figure out, maybe I better change my strategy here, because this isn't working for my family. I was pushing, I was imposing, I was preaching. I was actually, I hate to say, a little bit aggressive at the beginning, my first 6 months as a vegan, and very pushy and very judgmental. And instead of realizing they're on their own journey and they need to come to the decision on their own. And I completely agree with you in that. And that's really my stance now and how I approach anybody who's interested in learning more, and specifically my family. And that's, I think, actually what led to us finding our middle ground and being able.
Before you go into that, how did they respond when you were being aggressive and pushy? Like, what wasn't working there that helped you realize that wasn't really the best way?
Yeah. So immediately, to my husband's credit, he wasn't ready to go on the journey with me, but the only thing he asked me is because again, we're conditioned to know these things, to the dairy industry's ad campaign. He was worried about, because my son was just weaning. He was starting he would get cow's milk if we had gone that way. So he was nervous, well, what kind of milk is he going to get if he's not breastfeeding? So I promised him, he said, please just do the research and find out so that he's getting what he needs if he's going to be on plant milk. And so to his credit, he was amazing. And that's what we did. But with everything else, I told the kids, I basically started taking away all of their foods. There was no cheese pizza. There was no cheese. Immediately it was overnight, the fridge was emptied, no milk, no cheese. And for kids, especially, it was not. It was
mom's gone crazy.
Yeah. Exactly. They revolted. They were angry. They didn't understand. I tried to explain in a non-violent way about why I had made my choice and why this was better for the animals and better for our bodies. But, they were young. So, and I have to say, if I had to do it all over again, and I envy women who are vegan before they're pregnant, because if I 100%, if I had this information before I got pregnant, I would just raise my kids vegan from the beginning, whether my husband was or not. I think, in this case, I think my husband knowing how he was when I first went vegan, he would have been supportive in that, because he sees how healthy and everything, et cetera. But to tell a kid who's 6, who's used to all these foods, right? 6 and 3, it was a bit extreme. And so they were angry. There was a lot of anger, a lot of resentment. I would get defensive with my husband. I would get judgmental. I would, I'm like, you're not letting me live my best life. This is awful. Our kids are going to have all these problems. It was just all this fear for me coming to terms with all this information, thinking I'd screwed up my kids for 6 years, giving them all this unhealthy stuff. And of course, I had to learn compassion with myself and remind myself that I had been eating a regular diet for 30 plus years and I was okay. And it was going to be okay. And we were going to figure this out one day at a time, and it was going to all be okay. And it took me a good year to get into a groove with my family. And I would say that was just transitioning. I'd say it probably took a good 2 to 3 years where I actually had a meal planning routine and where I was able to feed my family whole food, plant-based foods at home and feel good about the choices we were making at home and teaching them so that when they did go outside of the home and wanted to make a choice, I knew that they were being conscious about, okay, you're going to have the chicken, but you're thinking about where that chicken came from, or you're going to eat that piece of birthday cake with the milk in it, but you know what kind of milk is it. So they were consciously making those decisions. And that for me was a huge win, so that even if they were choosing meat or animal products, they were being conscious about it. But like I said, it took about at least a year for us to get into a groove, and then a good 3 years to get to that second kind of mindset. And I don't know if you want me to talk about kind of how I did that, how we made that adjustment, and how I went from just throwing everything out and taking away all their foods that they knew to getting back to a happy place.
I would love for you to talk about that. But first, I do have a little story to share, and then I would love to ask your opinion about it. So I run the Plant-Based on a Budget support group on Facebook, and there was recently this really big conversation about how to introduce your family, and everyone had a different way of going about it. And some people were kind of where you were when you just wanted to share the information. And then since you're the cook, everyone's going to be vegan in the house, whether they like it or not. And my friend Anna chimed in about her experience where she tried veganism maybe a year and a half ago. and wanted to get her kids on board and took away all of their favorite foods, and they really resented her about it, which made her life miserable at dinner time every day. After a long day at work, she had to come home and fight with the kids, and it derailed her path on veganism and just made it much more complicated. And she threw her hands up and was like, this is just too much. I don't want to deal with it. And so while this conversation was happening and people were sharing their stories, it seems that when you're so fiery and passionate about veganism and you want everyone to feel it with you, that you tend to really force it hard. But in your experience, that didn't work. In Anna's experience, that didn't work. What would you, or how would you advise people to compassionately introduce it after you said it took you 1 to 3 years to develop meal plans? For someone who's just stepping into this and listening right now, this is their first month of trying vegan, how would you suggest they introduce it to their family in a way that's going to be sustainable for everyone long-term?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would do a lot of things differently. I think first and foremost, compassion is the first. I would come with compassion and love versus the so much judgment. And the first thing I think I would have done is I would have gone to my husband and I would have said, hey, I just read this book and this is what I want to do. And I'd love it if you would do it with me. I kind of more of an invitation. And can I share this information with you? Can I talk to you about why this is important for me? And would you try it with me for maybe ask for a period where you feel like, would I want to try this? I think I'm going to need some help. Would you do this with me? Can we try it for a couple of weeks or a month or whatever it is? Give yourself whatever you think it needs.
Like a support system?
Kind of like a support system. And I think inviting him in or her, your partner in as, would you do this? Is more inviting, and it puts you in a vulnerable place that, anybody who loves you is going to see like, wow, this is really meaningful for you. This means a lot to you. Okay, I can give it a try. And maybe they'll be like, this really isn't for me, but how about I give it a week or whatever. Anything they agree to is going to be a win for you and will allow you an opportunity to share the information in a non-threatening way, but just like, hey, I want to share this with you, or what do you think about this? And have discussion about it versus what I did, which was, oh my God, you have to read this. How could you not give up milk? What's wrong with you? I don't understand you. Like, it was bad. I was so like passionately negative almost, because, and I, was doing a disservice. And then for my kids, so for your partner, I would approach it as like being a support and helping you. Like, I want to do this, but I really need help. And I think it's going to be challenging to do on my own. Would you do this with me? Maybe go in that way. For my kids, there was not a lot of children's books available back then, but now there are more. And I think I would go that route as finding some kid-friendly resources to kind of show them. Kids are already innately connected to animals. Somehow we lose that the older we get. But if you talk to any little cutie pie, they love animals. They have a connection with them. So there's so many good resources. PETA Kids has great resources too. I would go and try to find some fun games and ways to connect with the kids. And I would do like easy switches that nobody's really going to notice, right? Like butter, mayonnaise, those are easy things, and kind of start to talk to the kids about like, hey, we're going to have this butter tonight because you know why? This doesn't come from an animal. And this is what's, and I would also explain to them like, mommy is doing this. This is super important to mom. And I want to share this with you. And so this is a new butter I'm trying. What do you guys think of the butter? And make it more fun and make them part of the process. They might say, "Ooh, I don't like that butter." Although there's so many good butters out there. I don't even know how they would know the difference. But, you'd say, "Oh, really? Well, what, you can have a discussion. What don't you like about it? I really like this because," or whatever. Like, it gives you an opportunity to have conversation and to make the family feel like they're part of the process and part of your journey, instead of you just saying, I threw that out and this is the butter we're eating now, which is what I did.
Hey, Stephanie, do you have resources that you can offer that you've either created or that you have found really helpful for your family?
I do. I actually have a lot of those resources I've shared on World of Vegan and some of the guides that we've done. But I do have some things that I can share over at my website. Like I definitely have different blog posts about sharing, with your family. And actually at World of Vegan, we have lots of posts about how to introduce your family to a plant-based diet, how to set up ground rules. We have a great post about setting up ground rules and resources there. So maybe we can I can put a list together and you can share it with the audience afterwards.
Yeah, we will definitely do that. But you also mentioned that there were good kids books that you would definitely introduce to your kids. So if people have kids, are there resources that were helpful to you?
Yes, I can definitely share my favorite children's books and some of the PETA Kids resources as well. And I have some lesson plans that I did. I call them lesson plans, or like activity kits or whatever, with my books that also help families navigate how to introduce plant foods. Because what I realize is I wrote these 2 books, and if I'm successful, the kids are going to get really excited about, giving up animal products, right? But then does a parent know how to support that? And so I wanted to have some resources for parents to share with their kids to help them try plant-based and go plant-based. So I can share those.
Would you mind just saying them in case someone doesn't have access or can't access our website, or for whatever reason, if they're just listening to this in the car while driving, can you just say some of your favorites?
Yes. Okay. I have to think. Okay. So, I'm like totally blanking. Of
Ruby
course,
Roth has like a bunch of really cute kids books that are awesome. Like This Is Why I Don't Eat Animals. And I guess she came out with a cookbook that's kind of illustrated. That's for young kids.
I love her cookbook. Her cookbook is a great resource.
Yeah. She's an artist and makes just incredible books.
And then there's the ABCs of vegan. I can't remember if that's Ruby or not, but that's another one that I like. And then there's a one about a vampire, and then there's the Vegasaurus. There's a vegetarian dinosaur. Oh, I'm sorry, Tony. I'm totally blanking.
If those listening go home and can't remember to look up in the show notes where we'll list a comprehensive resource with all of these, you can always just go to Amazon and just search vegan kids books, and you'll find tons. So many more are coming out these days, which is really, really exciting. And yeah, I was actually just talking about creating a roundup of the top 10 vegan children's books on World of Vegan. So that will be coming soon too as well.
Wonderful. Yeah. And I'll send you some after too that I've found really useful.
So a little bit back to your journey. When you started, were you ever accommodating to the meat eaters in your family? Was there a time where you were cooking meat for them and having everyone eat a separate meal, or maybe yourself just eat a separate meal? Or was it always, okay, I'm choosing whole food plant-based and you're choosing whole food plant-based?
No, there was definitely, I was for several months, that was in that 6 month to 1 year period where I was trying to figure it out. And I was met with so much resentment and hostility about just imposing that I quickly learned, okay, I can't impose. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make the vegan meal, and I will make the plant or the animal meal. And then that transitioned to a meal that was all cohesive, but there were animal and plant-based options. And it was exhausting. And I can remember, but I did that because of the kind of what you were saying, Tony, about this woman in your group who was realizing she'd come home and they were so angry, and it was just kind of defeating her whole spirit and her reason for going vegan. I finally said, okay, I've got to find a middle ground. I can't impose this on them. I'm going to eat what I want, and I'll honor what they want. So I was still the cook of the house and the grocery shopper and the meal planner. So it was still on me. And so what happened was, a few months into this, I can't even remember, maybe 6 months or so into this, I my family's Jewish, and we celebrate Shabbat every Friday, which is basically just an excuse for our family to have a very intimate sit down dinner where we turn off the phones and the whole night we dedicate to family time. And I usually make something extra special on Friday nights. And so I was making a roast chicken for them. And anyone who's ever made a roast chicken knows how you have to clean it and get all up in the chicken's business. And I just hysterically started crying and was like, I cannot do this anymore. And to my husband's credit, he was like, all right, don't do it. If we want to eat meat, we will cook the meat. Done. And that was the last time I've touched animal products and had to cook animal products.
Your husband sounds like a really nice guy. I know a lot of other people who have had totally different experiences where, change is really hard. And when you marry someone, you expect them to at least grow in the same ways you grow. But sometimes when they choose a path that is different, it is difficult to be ultra supportive if it conflicts with how you think about things. And diet is so huge. You eat together, especially during the weekends, 3 times, maybe 4 times every day of the weekend. So I totally applaud your husband for being supportive.
Yeah, I realize I don't give him enough credit. He's pretty amazing because not only from the beginning, he respected my choice, even though he's always said, I respect your choice. I believe it's the right choice. I'm just not ready to go there yet. But if I look at the changes he's made to his own diet over the years, he practically eats all plant-based now. And he chooses Beyond Burgers instead of hamburgers. Like he will not eat beef anymore. So, I mean, but he's always been, I think, and what I tell families who are asking me is there's a respect, and we had ground rules. We did set up ground rules, but he has always tried to meet me at like this compassionate place of like really understanding what was driving my desire to be vegan. And he knew it was a lifestyle change for me. It wasn't just a dietary change. It was a lifestyle change. And so he respected that, and he's done his best to support me. And yeah, I'm feeling like I need to go give him an extra hug today, because now I'm like feeling like, I don't say thank you enough.
I think that's a testament to your changed approach. When people are treated with compassion, they want to be supportive, and you modeled that. You changed your approach. You knew that what you were doing, forcing information upon people and forcing your choices on other people, was not working. And you instead tried to accommodate them and understand where they're coming from. And so ultimately they want to support you because of your efforts. And now look at him. He's choosing plant-based on his own, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And we don't have, there's no drama anymore. It's like, I mean, another thing is recent, not so recently, but probably like 2 years ago, we switched to having pots and pans that were strictly vegan versus non-vegan. And I had, I don't know, whatever. He was totally down with that. And then what happened is one day I noticed he had used the wrong pan for his eggs. And I was like hysterical. And it actually, Tony, what you were saying about the compassion, I like literally had to like calm myself down and go, oh my God, it's not like he did this on purpose. I got so enraged, like, how could you do that? And he's like, whoa, like, I'm sorry, I messed up. Like, I didn't realize that was the wrong pan, but the fact that he, and he was, the fact that we have 2 pans in the first place, everybody makes mistakes, but it's having that compassion for me to go, okay, I'm going to meet you halfway. I forgive you. You didn't do this on purpose. You weren't trying to like goad me into an argument here. It was a honest mistake, and being able to have that discussion and reconnect and say, hey, just, but it really is important to me that my food isn't on a plate where you've cooked eggs or meat, and this is why, and being able to have that conversation to why it was so important to me that we didn't share those pans. It's good. It's good to be able to have those conversations,
I think we talk a lot about perfection on this podcast. And I think this is like everything we've talked about today is a perfect demonstration of the more we hold on to ideals of perfection and putting the pressure on ourselves to make sure every action we do is, completely vegan and it's black and white. It's all or nothing. It's like all has to be done this way or not at all. Leads to a lot of resentment and a lot of issues coming up. But the more we can let go of that, a lot of times, ultimately, it doesn't even really make a difference for our why. Like if your why is animals, it hurts your heart to use a pan that was also used for meat. But for animals, it doesn't really make a difference. And so letting go of those feelings of needing to be perfect makes the situation easier for everyone around you. And especially when we're asking so much of our family to like understand why this is important to us and like support us. Anything that we can do to also make it easier on them is, I think, so important. And it's been really fascinating because Stephanie, I've known you for many years now. And ever since I've known you, I've always felt like you've had like the most compassionate, balanced, understanding, like approach to everything. You've written so many resources on like how to approach things with your family and, meals you can make that are vegan, but your family won't notice, that carnivores will love, that you don't even have to talk about or bring up over dinner. Like you've always, since I've known you, had such wisdom around this. And it's really fascinating in this podcast, understanding the foundation of where that came from. I think you can become the most kind of wise about something after having been through a situation that was the opposite. Like we learn so much from what we did wrong or what we regret doing and how we would change that going forward, which makes you able to help so many people and like prevent those struggles and future families for other people going vegan. So that's awesome. And yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
I have another question. For someone who says, you're the parent, why don't you control the food choices, which is what I was seeing in the group, how would you respond? I know a lot of people were feeling a little bit attacked by that because that's not how they choose to parent. How would you respond in a way that you feel would be effective and would help someone understand your choice?
So yeah, that was something I struggled with big time when I first went vegan, was like, well, I'm in charge, but I have a partner. And my partner wasn't on the same page with me. And it's about compromise. Anybody who's married or is in a relationship, committed relationship, knows like it's you both have to work together. And so me imposing, it wasn't just my way, it had to be our way. And I think that, again, different if I had not had kids first, right? If I was raising them from the beginning, I have to say, I agree. I see that standpoint, but you're starting with, fresh babies that you can, teach them how from the beginning. But I think when you're starting from a place where you have kids who are old enough to understand, like with my son, obviously, he was full on vegan actually, and through the beginning till he had solid foods. When he started to get old enough, actually, might be helpful to answer this question. He was vegan, completely vegan. And it wasn't until he was old enough to start asking for foods and I could explain to him, well, mom doesn't eat this because blah, 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 and explain to him. And so he could make the choice. His dad did eat certain foods. And so he's, you have to respect each other. Mom's right and dad's wrong. I mean, what kind of a family and relationship are you going to have if we're doing that? So I think it sounds great and easy on black and white. And it sounds very black and white when you say, oh, well, you're the parent, just impose, but it's very gray. That's not reality. Right. I live that. That's not how it works.
And you're the perfect example of how not taking that approach like leads to more change in your family than taking that approach. It's crazy. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's crazy because even so I'm pregnant. I'm starting to think more and more about raising my kid. And of course, I'm in a very fortunate situation where my husband's vegan. I'm vegan. We've both been vegan for over a decade. We're fully on board with raising our kid vegan. But even in that sort of perfect bubble situation, there are situations that the kids will be experiencing that are not easy. Like, what if the kid goes to a birthday party and there's cake? Are you going to say, no, 3-year-old, you can't have that cake that all the other kids are eating? What if they go to school and there's a snack? Like, you can pack them their own stuff, but then they're kind of like the weird kid. Like, why am I having to eat different food there? And then like, will that resentment build up? So I have actually an article on World of Vegan that was a pretty controversial one that someone wrote about, that was called, I Let My Kids Eat Non-Vegan Birthday Cake. And it's that we put this pressure on ourselves once we kind of are exposed to the information about animals and the environment and health to embrace it fully and completely. But as you're showing here, and your life is a perfect demonstration of this, a lot of times that final 1% between almost perfect and actually perfect can actually do so much harm and can make people rebel, go the other direction, go vegan and quit vegan, have your family hate you and hate all vegans.
And I think
it's so true. It's so true.
I think Michelle made a really good point earlier about, well, I guess it depends on your why. Is it health? Is it animals? Is it environment? It's not going to change much to animals if your kid eats the cake.
Right.
It's really not. And so if you want to do it for mere expression of purity and to show that you're morally superior, then fine. But if you really want to be
ego-driven decision, basically.
Yes, if you want to be effective, it's not changing much.
Yeah,
exactly.
And in fact, probably doing harm, because then all the parents there are going to be like, wait, your kid can't eat the cake, but there's no animal. Like, to them, they'd be like, well, it's not meat. There's no, and so it's just confusing for.
Yeah. And even from the health perspective, like growing up, my mom was extremely healthy. And like candy was almost never allowed, sweet cereals, never allowed, like super healthy way of growing up. But I obviously would go to the grocery store and see all the yummy things. I'd see all the commercials. I'd go to friends' houses and they'd be able to eat whatever they wanted. And it left me with like an overall understanding of like healthy eating. And I still bring that forward to this day, but also an obsession when I was younger with sweets and like when I'd go to friends' houses, I would just want all the unhealthy things. And I would think, when I grow up, I could eat as much of this as I want, you know? So it's like you're rebelling against when you take it to really, really extremes, oftentimes kids can rebel.
And I'd like to clarify that both Michelle and I and Stephanie really promote the vegan diet. I think that is an understatement. We want people to choose vegan options whenever possible. And we have dedicated our lives to that, but also to be understanding and compassionate and to not beat yourself up to the point where you're resentful or your family's resentful or it's going to not be sustainable long-term. And that's what happens over time. We see it over and over again. We know that, 74% of people who become vegetarian end up failing and not wanting to try it again. So what we're saying when we're talking about imperfections is not, oh, it's fine, eat animals, whatever, but it's be thoughtful, not beat yourself up, don't beat your family up, and keep choosing plant-based options.
Yep. I can see in my own family how the approach of not imposing and coming at it with just compassion and education has made a difference. I don't think my oldest would have gone vegetarian on her own. I mean, I was jumping for joy. It was a Thanksgiving decision. It was, she made that decision.
Hardest time.
She made it. And she stood up to her grandmother who was like, what do you mean you're not eating turkey? Like she had it. I didn't need to rescue her. Like she was so strong in her decision not because I told her that's what she should do, is because she had come to that decision on her own. And then my son, my youngest, who eats meat, he will not eat. We buy veggie bacon. Like even when we're not at home, like even if he could have bacon outside of the home, like when we go on like our family trip or whatever with my family, he's like, Mom, can you get the veg bacon? And it's not, and he likes the taste, whatever, but it's because I don't know, his brain, he's 10 and I've seen him since he was starting at like 4, kind of starting to ask questions about it and figure it out. And we talk about it a lot. He asks me questions randomly about it. He's trying to work out, like for some reason, the bacon is a hard thing for him to like, he sees the pig and he doesn't want to eat the pig, but somehow he can eat the chicken. So it's like, I don't know like how he's putting it together, but he's definitely thinking about it and making choices that for him feel right as he's trying to figure it out. And I can clearly see that he is trying to figure it out. And for him, he feels better about not eating the bacon, and then who knows, we'll get there with the chicken.
Yeah, I think like an overall big picture to kind of advise for people who are looking for what approach to take is always taking a happy, joyful, inspiring approach. Like as you're going through your struggles personally, go through those struggles, but then like lead by positive example. If you're going to be a Debbie Downer talking about what's wrong with everyone else, what's wrong with their choices, why this is horrible for the world. Oh my God, did you see this horrible video? Like no one's going to even want to be around you. They'll mute you on Facebook. They'll like no one wants to be around that.
I even mute people.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like too many factory farm videos. Bye-bye. But yeah, as soon as you kind of shift that, which I think a lot of people who go plant-based go through this stage of starting out a lot more dramatic and negative because the weight of the problems of the world are suddenly feeling on their shoulders. And then we realize like we can be so much more effective by sharing the joy of it. It doesn't have to be a sacrifice. It can be more delicious. And especially as you discover new foods, your palate can expand, and just it's such a wonderful thing. Focusing on the positive and showing the joy of it really helps bring people along a lot faster, I've found, and it seems you found than taking the opposite approach.
So we are getting ready to wrap up, but we could talk about this forever. Like there's so many complications when dealing with multiple people, especially when everyone has a strong personality and is opinionated. And so we could bring you back on in another season, but where can people find you if they have questions in the meantime?
You can find me at stephaniedreyer.com. My last name is spelled like the ice cream, Dreyer. And that's the best place to connect with me. And then for more resources, I wanted to talk about one of the things that set my family up for success was setting up ground rules. And I have a great blog on that over at World of Vegan. And so definitely check that out if you want kind of like, not like a blueprint, but setting up ground rules together for setting up love and compassionate households. That is the first place I would recommend starting if you're going vegan and wondering how to make it work with your family. But definitely connect with me over at my website, and I'm on social at Veegmama, Veegmama, and I share a lot of stuff over there and would love to connect over there with you too.
Cool. We will definitely include all of those at plantpoweredpodcast.com.
Yep, in the show notes. Thank you so much, Stephanie, both for coming on today and taking the time, and for all of the resources that you've put out there over the years. And I know you're so committed to continuing this going forward. I know you have put a lot of your heart and soul and time and energy and money and everything into helping this process be so much easier for other people who choose to go plant-based and other families. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I can't wait to share this on my plant-based support group because I know it's going to be super helpful. And I also can't wait to check out your resources. I am excited to know that you celebrate Shabbat because that's something that we're hoping to incorporate in our lives. My husband's Jewish, and I'm going to definitely check out your website for some recipes.
Wonderful. Well, thanks, ladies. It was great to be on with you.
Have a beautiful day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Wow, that was a lot. I know there's truly so much we can dive into on this topic. And I do sincerely hope we can continue to have more guests talk about this, because I think it's one of the hardest challenges. If you are in that situation where your family's not on board with what you're doing, we're sending you strength, and hopefully all of these resources and tips from Stephanie helped you out.
And once again, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Osea, for allowing us to do this great episode. Remember to check them out at oseamalibu.com and use the promo code PlantPoweredPodcast.
Thank you so much, Osea. If you guys are looking for the highest quality skincare that's vegan and cruelty-free, it's so great to have a reliable option, and they're there for you. Thank you so much, as always, for listening, for tuning in. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review if you can. And we will see you in the next episode.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.